That day, Julien was sitting in his office in front of his computer, but he wasn't really working. His eyes were empty, his mind somewhere else. For the past few days, he had felt that something was wrong in his life. A strange exhaustion, constant stress, as if everything could collapse at any moment. Suddenly, his phone rang. He looked at the screen. Racine. His heart started racing. He answered immediately. But from her very first words, he knew something was wrong. Her voice was shaking. She was breathing badly. She was almost crying. Julien, come quickly, please. His whole body froze. What happened? Our daughter. She's at the hospital. She had a seizure. She fainted. The world stopped. Nothing else existed. Where? At the military hospital. Come fast. Julien didn't even think. He jumped up so suddenly that his chair fell over, grabbed his keys, and ran outside. In the street, everything felt too slow. The cars, the people, time itself. Only one thought repeated in his head. My daughter, my daughter, my daughter. When he arrived at the hospital, he ran through the corridors, searching for Rosine. Then he saw her sitting on a bench, her eyes red, her hands trembling. He rushed toward her. Where is she? Rosine pointed at a door. The doctors are with her. He sat beside her, but no words came out. The silence became heavy, unbearably heavy. All they could hear were hospital sounds, footsteps, machines, distant voices. Rosine cried softly, without sound, without strength. Julien stared at the floor as if searching for an answer. For the first time in his life, he felt completely powerless. Minutes passed, then hours. Every second felt like an eternity. Finally, the door opened. A doctor stepped out. His face was serious. Too serious. Julien stood up immediately. Doctor! My daughter! Is she okay? The doctor hesitated for a moment, then said softly, Your daughter has a rare illness. Those words hit Julien like a blow. Rosine burst into tears. Julien stood frozen. But we can treat her. A small hope appeared. Fragile, very fragile. But the treatment will be long, complicated, and extremely expensive. Silence. A deep, crushing silence. Julien looked at Rosine. Rosine looked at Julien. Without speaking, they understood each other. Their lives had just changed. And at that exact moment, without knowing it yet, their real battle had begun. The next morning, Julien woke up without having truly slept. All night, he had lain awake, staring at the ceiling. His mind never stopped. He thought about his daughter. The hospital. The machines around her. Her fragile little body. He tried to find a solution. Any solution. But every path led back to the same wall. Money! Very early, he got up. His face looked exhausted. His eyes were red, as if the night had lasted an entire week. He dressed slowly, without energy. Even the simplest movements felt heavy. Before leaving, he looked at Rosine. She was sitting silently, lost in thought. Neither of them found the words, but they understood each other. When Julien arrived at work, he tried to focus. It was impossible. The numbers on his screen meant nothing anymore. The voices around him felt distant. Only one thing mattered now. His daughter. After several minutes of hesitation, he took a deep breath. He had no choice. He needed help. He walked toward the office of his boss, Mr. Babin. Every step felt difficult, as if he were walking toward judgment. He knocked on the door, waited for an answer, then entered. His voice was low, almost trembling. He explained everything. His daughter's illness. How serious it was. The cost of treatment. The urgency. He spoke honestly, without hiding his fear. The more he spoke, the more his emotions rose. At one point, his voice cracked, but he kept going. He had no right to break down now. He asked for help, even a small amount, in advance on his salary. A loan. Anything. He wasn't asking for luxury, only for a chance to save his daughter. Mr. Babin listened in silence. His face remained closed. He seemed to think, but his eyes offered no real solution. After a few seconds, he answered calmly. He said he was sorry. He understood the situation, but he could not help. Those words struck Julian like a violent blow. For a few seconds, he didn't react. He almost hoped he had heard wrong. So, he insisted. He begged. He spoke about his daughter, about her life, about the danger. His voice grew louder, more desperate, but nothing changed. The decision had already been made. Julian understood then that he was alone, completely alone. He left the office slowly. Around him, people continued their day normally. Some laughed. Others talked. Others worked. But for him, everything had become silent. That evening, he returned home with a heavy heart. Rosine was waiting, worried. The moment she saw him, she understood the answer was bad. Julian sat down, exhausted. He lowered his head and simply said, "My boss refused." No more words were needed. The silence that followed was painful. For several minutes, they said nothing. Then Rosine spoke softly. "We can't give up." Julian nodded. They both knew they had no more options. So they made a difficult decision. Ask others for help. They picked up their phones. Julian called friends, co-workers, cousins. Rosine called her sisters, parents, acquaintances. Again and again they explained the situation. Every call was an effort. Every word reminded them how serious it was. Some people were moved and gave a little money. Others said they wished they could help but couldn't. Some didn't answer at all. With every call, hope rose, then fell. Hours passed like that. Exhausted, emotionally drained, they finally gathered a small amount. It wasn't much, but it was enough to begin treatment. The next day, they went to the hospital and paid what they could. For a brief moment, Julian felt slight relief. He had done something. He had moved forward. But deep inside, one truth was already clear. This was only the beginning. The treatment would last. The costs would rise. And they had almost nothing left. As Julian looked at the little money remaining, he felt enormous pressure on his shoulders. He knew he would have to find a solution. But he still didn't know what. And for the first time in his life, he realized something terrible. Despite all his willpower, despite all his efforts, he might not have the power to save his own daughter. And that thought slowly began to break him from the inside. One evening, Julian came home completely exhausted. His day had been long, heavy, filled with stress and worry. Every minute spent thinking about his sick daughter drained him even more. He felt as if he were carrying an enormous weight on his shoulders, a weight that never became lighter. When he opened the door, the house was quiet. Too quiet. He slowly removed his shoes and walked into the living room. Then he saw Rosine. She was kneeling in the corner of the room. Her hands were clasped, her eyes were closed. She was praying silently, with deep focus, as if nothing else around her existed. Julian stopped for a moment. He looked at her, and something inside him broke. Not sadness this time. Anger. Anger that had built up for days. Since the hospital. Since his boss refused. Since every door kept closing. The anger rose all at once. Without control. Without restraint. He walked toward her sharply. His voice turned hard. "You really think God is going to help us?" Rosine didn't move. She kept praying as if she hadn't heard him. But Julian didn't stop. "He does nothing for us." "Nothing!" His voice trembled, but this time with rage. "Our daughter is sick. She's suffering. And you're here praying?" He paced the room, agitated. "Stop this! Stop praying and find a solution. We need money, not prayers." Silence returned. But it was a different silence. Heavier. Rosine slowly opened her eyes. But she did not answer. She did not shout. She did not defend herself. She slowly closed her eyes again, and in a calm whisper, almost inaudible, she said, "Lord, forgive him for those words. It struck Julian in a strange way, not the way he expected. He wanted a reaction, an argument, shouting, anger. But all he received was peace. And that peace disturbed him even more, because deep inside he knew he was suffering. And he no longer knew what to do, so instead of apologizing, he chose to run from it. He shook his head in frustration and walked toward the door. Keep praying if you want. I'm going to find a real solution. He left the house, furious, his heart full of frustration. Outside, night had already fallen. The air was cool, but it did nothing to calm him. He walked without direction. His mind was in chaos, torn between the fear of losing his daughter and the anger of being powerless. And for the first time, Julian began drifting away from everything he once believed in. His steps moved almost automatically, as if his body were walking without him. Around him, the city was quiet, nearly empty. A few streetlights dimly lit the road, but the atmosphere remained heavy. His thoughts were tangled. He thought of his daughter in the hospital, her fragile face, the machines surrounding her. He remembered the doctor's words, the cost of treatment, how little time they might have left. The more he thought about it, the tighter his chest became. Then he thought of Rossini, her calmness, the way she prayed. And somehow that image angered him even more. He couldn't understand how she could stay so peaceful while their world was collapsing. Julian ran a hand over his face, exhausted and lost. He whispered to himself that he needed a solution. A real solution. Not words. Not empty hope. Something concrete. That was when a black car slowed down beside him. The sound of the engine caught his attention. The car stopped directly in front of him. Its windows were tinted. The atmosphere changed instantly. Julian stopped walking. He looked at the car suspiciously. The door opened slowly. A man stepped out. He was dressed entirely in black, elegant suit, polished shoes. His face was calm, almost too calm. He seemed neither rushed nor surprised, as if he already knew everything. The man walked a few steps forward and looked Julian straight in the eyes. Then he said his name. Julian. Julian flinched. His heart began racing. How do you know my name? The man did not answer directly. Instead, he gave a faint smile. You have problems. It was not a question. It was a statement. Julian remained silent. Part of him wanted to leave. Another part of him stayed frozen, drawn by something invisible. The man turned back to the car, opened the trunk, and pulled out a black briefcase. He placed it gently on the hood and opened it. Inside was money, a lot of money. Stacks of bills, neatly arranged. Clean. Real. His heart pounded violently. He had never seen that much money in his life. The man spoke calmly. He said he could help him, that he could solve all his problems, that he could save his daughter, that he could give him a different life, a life without suffering, without lack. Julian swallowed hard. He felt something shifting inside him. He thought of his daughter, again, always his daughter. Then, almost without realizing it, he asked, "What do I have to do?" The man looked at him without emotion. Then he said simply, "Sacrifice your wife." Silence fell instantly. Time seemed to stop. Julian stepped back. His face changed. "No, never." His answer came quickly, almost instinctively, but the man did not move. He did not get angry. He continued speaking with the same disturbing calm. He said it was only a choice. A simple choice. He explained that Julian could rebuild his life, that he could find another wife, that he could start again, but his daughter had only one life, and without money, she might die. Those words struck Julian in the heart. He no longer answered. His eyes dropped to the ground. His mind began to battle itself. On one side, he saw Rosine, his wife, the woman who had always stood by him. On the other side, he saw his fragile daughter in danger, and between them, he felt trapped. He took a deep breath. His body was tense. His thoughts became confused. The man stepped slightly closer. Not aggressively, just enough to keep the pressure on him. Julian closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again, and for the first time, he was no longer thinking like before. His voice became weaker, more uncertain. How? That single question revealed that something had changed inside him, deep inside. Julian had crossed a line he never imagined he could cross. Back home, Julian was silent. He said nothing. He did not even look at Rosine. His mind was elsewhere, completely consumed by what had just happened. The words of the man in black, repeated endlessly in his head like a voice he could no longer silence. The house was quiet. Rosine had fallen asleep. She lay on the bed peacefully, as if nothing in the world could disturb her. Her face looked calm, almost radiant in the dim light of the room. Julian stood there for a long moment, watching her. A deep hesitation moved through him. He remembered everything they had lived through together. The hard times, the happy times, the support she had always given him. But the image of his sick daughter returned immediately, stronger, more painful. So he closed his eyes, trying to push away his thoughts, and slowly approached the bed. His heart raced. His hands trembled slightly. Standing beside Rosine, he began to whisper the prayer the man had given him. The first time, his voice was low, hesitant. The second time, he swallowed hard. The third time, his stare became fixed. He tried not to think, tried to convince himself he was doing it for a good reason, to save his daughter. The fourth time, his whole body tightened as if sensing something was wrong. But he continued. The fifth time, everything changed. A violent wind burst into the room like an invisible force appearing from nowhere. The curtains flew upward. Objects shook violently. Julian was thrown backward with force. He slammed into the wall and crashed onto the floor. Shocked, unable to understand what was happening. His heart pounded wildly. Terrified, he looked around. Then a light appeared in the room, an intense, pure light that illuminated the entire bedroom. And within that light, a presence, an angel. Cone, majestic, powerful. Julian remained frozen on the floor, unable to move. His eyes were wide open. He trembled. The angel's voice was gentle, yet commanding. It asked why Julian wanted to destroy his own wife. Those words pierced him. He burst into tears. He explained that he wanted to save his daughter, that he was desperate, that he no longer knew what to do. His voice was broken, full of regret. The angel looked at him gravely. Then it answered, "Despair never justifies evil. Easy money always comes with consequences. There is another path, a harder path, but a righteous one." It spoke to him of faith, of courage, of choices. Every word echoed deeply inside Julian like a truth he had refused to face. Julian lowered his head. He had no strength left, no arguments left. He understands. At last he whispers that he is sorry, that he regrets everything, that he no longer knew what he was doing. Then the light slowly fades away. The room becomes calm again. Silence returns, but Julian is no longer the same, because he has just realized how close he came to falling completely. Julian remains on the floor, trembling, still shaken by everything he has just experienced. His breathing is uneven, and his heart pounds hard in his chest. For several seconds he does not even dare to move, as if afraid it might all begin again. Then slowly, he lifts his head and looks around. The bedroom is normal again. Peace has returned as if nothing had happened. His eyes move to the place where he had left the briefcase. It is gone. He blinks, thinking he made a mistake. No. The money has disappeared as if it never existed. At that moment, Julian understands. What had been offered to him was never a solution. It was a trap. His legs give out beneath him. He drops to his knees, his hands on the floor. Tears rise uncontrollably. His voice is weak, broken, but sincere. He asks for forgiveness not to receive something this time, not for money, not for an easy answer, but simply for what he almost did. For the first time in a long time, Julian prays with all his heart, and in that moment of silence, he finally begins to wake up. The next morning, Julian wakes with a different feeling. The exhaustion is still there. The problems have not disappeared. But something inside him has changed. The anger is gone. The panic is gone. In their place is a calm he does not yet fully recognize. He looks at Rosine. She's already awake, sitting quietly. For a few seconds, he hesitates. He remembers the night before, his words, his rage, the darkness he nearly stepped into. Then he makes a decision. He walks gently toward her and tells her that he wants to pray with her. Rosine looks at him in surprise. She did not expect that. Not after everything he said, not after the anger he showed toward God, but in his eyes she sees sincerity. So she accepts without asking questions. A little later, they decide to visit the pastor. The church is quiet. The atmosphere is peaceful. As soon as they enter, Julian feels something different, as if the weight he had been carrying is beginning to lift. He sits down and starts to pray with faith and honesty. Julian closes his eyes. This time, he's not searching for quick answers. He is not asking for money. He is not asking for a miracle to prove something. He asks for forgiveness, for his anger, for his lack of faith, for what he almost became. Tears run down his face. He does not hold them back. He lets out everything he had kept buried inside him. His fear, his pain, his shame. Rosine prays quietly beside him, present, steady, strong. And for the first time, Julian feels peace, even though nothing has been solved yet. Then suddenly, his phone rings. The sound echoes through the silence. Julian hesitates. His heart starts racing again. He looks at the screen. The hospital. His hands tremble slightly as he answers. A calm, professional voice speaks. It begins with the words, "Your daughter." Julian holds his breath. Time seems to stop. Then the voice continues. "She is healed." Julian says nothing. He remains frozen, unable to process what he has just heard. Rosine looks at him, worried. Then he slowly repeats the words. And she understands. Tears rise instantly. But this time, they are tears of joy. They look at each other without speaking. And in that moment, Julian understands something he will never forget. It was not money he truly needed. It was not an easy solution. It was faith, and he understood it only when he thought he had lost everything. In life, there are moments when everything seems to collapse. Moments when pain is so intense that you feel ready to do anything to escape it. But those are the moments when our choices matter most. Desperation can push you toward things you never imagined. It can make you believe that the easy road is the only road. That money can solve everything. But the truth is this: quick solutions often come with hidden prices. A price on your conscience, a price on your soul, a price on the people you love. This story teaches one essential lesson. You can never build something good on a bad decision. Even when life becomes difficult, never betray your values. Never harm those who stand beside you, because real strength is not finding the fastest solution. Real strength is standing firm when everything is against you. And sometimes, when you choose the right path, life surprises you where you least expect it.